All right, guys, we want to finish up section 3, and we're going to look at promised freedom. We're going to look at the changing goals of the Civil War for Lincoln. You should be able to answer this essential question: how did changing goals affect the Civil War? 3 things you should be able to do: identify Lincoln's primary goal, then describe how the effects of describe the effects of emancipation, and so looking at the shift in Lincoln's goal, and then third, look at the contributions of African Americans on both sides of the war. So Lincoln's goal initially, as we talked, was to restore the Union. He said this: if I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing all the slaves, I would do it. And if I could do it by freeing some of and leaving others alone, I would also do that. Here we see Lincoln is really trying to speak to all those involved in the Civil War, those on the Union side, those on the Confederate side, but most exclusively, if you look at that last line, if I could free some and leave some others alone, he's trying to speak to those 4 important border states. So Lincoln's really trying to handle this issue of slavery very cautiously. But as the war goes on, we're going to see he's trying to keep the support of those 4 border states. As the war continues, the Emancipation Proclamation is announced by Lincoln. Quite often we confuse the emancipation with freeing of the slaves, when in actuality the Emancipation Proclamation didn't free the slaves. It just proclaimed or gave a statement by Lincoln that all the slaves were actually free. And we're going to look what I mean by that in a little bit. So Lincoln broadens his goals for war. He decides to free enslaved African Americans living in the Confederacy. And so he comes out, he has this beautiful speech, and he does this for several reasons. One is to assure in the speech that he would not free all the slaves. So he doesn't proclaim that he's going to free all the slaves, but he focused exclusively on those in the South or the Southern states. And what is his motives? Why do it at this particular point in the Civil War? Well, you have close to some 3 million slaves are now helping the Confederates, some by force, others through a possibility to receive freedom. And so you have the Confederacy trying to get their numbers boosted. Remember, we talked about the Confederacy having 9 million citizens fighting, available to fight, versus 22 million to fight. And so the Confederates are trying to garner more support in fighting war, and Lincoln is trying to quell that or stop those slaves from actually participating and helping them. And so at the Battle of Antietam, as General Lee is retreating and Lincoln is declaring that victory, he announces this. And part of the reason is because he feels that the tides are swaying, that the Union is now moving toward control and ultimately will have victory. And so his true idea of freeing slaves as a part of his campaign comes to light. What was its impact? Well, first it changed the goal for the soldiers from fighting for the Union, to reunite the Union, to ending slavery. When in actuality, the impact in the South was minimal. No slaves in the South was actually gained their freedom on that particular day. The proclamation, if you'll circle this again too in your notes, actually won sympathy from Europe. This is important. Europe was supporting the South with supplies and money and trade, and now this is going to come to a halt. And so the Confederates take a major blow after the Emancipation Proclamation. So let's look at some of the African American contributions as Lincoln moves forward to emancipate the Confederate slaves. So African Americans initially in the war effort was unable to participate because of federal law prohibited them to do that. And so Lincoln felt that this is no time to fight with one hand when both hands are needed. This is no time to fight with only your white hand and allow your black hand to remain tied. And so this idea that it's going to take not just the effort of white soldiers, but it's going to also take the effort of free African Americans who can contribute to the war. And we're going to look at the 54th Regiment to show how this impacted the war. And so 1862, this federal law is repealed, and you have African Americans and free slaves that will eventually escape through the Underground Railroad and to fight for the Union, enlist. What's unique about African Americans that participated in the Union was that they were in mainly all black regiments, and these regiments were led by white commanders. So even though the North is against slavery, you still see that underneath there is still issues of equality and freedom that's taking place in the North as well. So African Americans, when you get to class, you'll have opportunity to take a look at the 54th Regiment video. But for now, I'll just move on and go to the last section of our notes. By the end of the war, you're going to see close to 200,000 African Americans actually fight, and close to 40,000 or more gave their lives in the effort of the Civil War. One particular act of bravery, or acts of bravery performed by African Americans was the 54th Massachusetts Regiment that led the attack on Fort Wagner, a strategic stronghold held by the Confederacy. In this particular battle, half of the regiment was lost. Even the commander of this particular regiment was lost. However, Fort Wagner would fall, and it would garner a great victory for the Union Army. Sergeant William Carney, he was the first African American to be given a Medal of Honor in the Civil War, and thus catapulting the importance of African Americans in the war effort. Make sure you do your summary in Moodle. If you need to, rewind, go back, write down any questions you may have for me, and we'll have some time to discuss in class.